Are the Pokemon games doomed to repeat its recent mistakes, or are we about to head into a golden era of Pokemon? Hi, I'm Tri, and I've been thinking a lot about the current state of Pokemon games. It's no secret to anyone that Pokemon and Game Freak have been consistently letting us down one way or another when it comes to the Pokemon games. Critique is natural and fanbases will always have suggestions, but this is a whole different animal. To give you some context on my experience with the Pokemon series, we gotta go back to 2009. It was Christmas Day, and I woke up to my very own blue Nintendo DS Lite with a Pokemon game. And no, it wasn't Gen 4, it was actually Pokemon Mystery Dungeons Explorers of Sky. On my 10th birthday, the following April, I got my hands on a mainline Pokemon game, Pokemon Heart Gold. Woo, what a good game. We can talk about that another time, but since then, I've played pretty much every mainline Pokemon game as well as gone back to some of the older ones like Ruby, Yellow, or Crystal. Like most kids my age, the Pokemon trading cards were our introduction to Pokemon, where we'd exchange cards on the playground and share our highest HP cards. And then I'd wake up early on Saturday mornings to watch the Pokemon anime. So yeah, it kinda consumed my kid life like so many of you also probably experienced, and this series continues to be something I'm following up on and playing with each generation that comes out. Those of you around my age or older experienced a pretty wonderful era of Pokemon on the DS, where we got generations 4 through 6 and we're just kinda experiencing peak Pokemon. Each game iterated on the last and graphically looked amazing. I remember booting up Pokemon Black when it released and just being in awe at how three-dimensional it felt, with the weather also changing and making the world feel so alive. When we actually jumped to 3D on the 3DS, we were all so excited. I remember the hype for Pokemon X and Y just being through the roof, and maybe it's because I was also starting to be more online and on YouTube, so it felt like there was a lot of momentum going into this new generation of Pokemon. But the game finally came out, and the game was good. I don't think we were really blown away in retrospect, but Kalos had some great Pokemon designs, the story was pretty good, the game was way too easy, but still a good time. We also were introduced to Mega Evolutions, which is probably the best gimmick the Pokemon games have had post X and Y. Then we moved to Sun and Moon, which are personally my favorite Pokemon games from the 3DS era. This is where we get regional variants that add really cool type and visual changes to Pokemon we've already seen before. Let me just plug Alolan Marowak real quick, cause he was clean. I think we had some really great Pokemon designs this generation too. I never played Ultra Sun or Moon or Omega Ruby or Alpha Sapphire, so I don't have too much to say on that, but overall I think we ate pretty well on the Nintendo 3DS. We had some good games, and I think we were starting to feel that fatigue of doing the exact same thing in virtually the same way with each game. Sun and Moon had totem challenges and kind of broke it up. We also finally got rid of our HM slaves, sorry Badoo. But at its core, the gameplay was virtually the same. It was when we realized that our beloved handheld was also merging into home console with the Nintendo Switch that Pokemon fans rejoiced. We were gonna have Pokemon in HD. The possibilities were literally endless. We played Breath of the Wild and we're just thinking, wow. When this becomes a Pokemon world that I can fully explore, it's gonna be so cool. And after almost 8 years of Nintendo Switch, well, we never really quite got that, did we? Pokemon Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee came out first, and I was so disappointed. I expected Game Freak to come out swinging for their first game, and it just felt way too gimmicky. Like, you knew that this was a way to introduce a newer generation of people to Pokemon, so it was hard to be too mad at it. It was also visually pretty good looking. Because I'm a big Heart Gold Soul Silver stan, I love when your Pokemon is falling behind you. Oh, I eat that up. So obviously this wasn't the amazing new generation of Pokemon we were waiting for, but then it was finally announced, and we got Pokemon Sword and Shield. I don't really like this game. Maybe it's an inner American thing to hate anything related to the United Kingdom. Nah, I'm just kidding. It just felt so plain, and they showed off this half-baked wild area as the premium feature, and when you see what Monolith Soft is doing with their game that came out 2 years prior on the Switch, you're just kind of disappointed, like, what happened? I'm gonna move past my disdain for Sword and Shield and just move on to the next game we got. I'm also gonna be skipping past Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl because I didn't play them or have anything to say about them. Pretty sure Lukewarm was the most positive thing people felt about this game, so let's move on to a new game, Pokemon Legends Arceus. Okay, now we're cooking a little bit. We are in open zones with a feudal Japan theme around when Pokemon and humans did not live in harmony. They can attack you, and the mechanics here of just throwing Pokeballs, of having to physically aim and hit your target and do it while on the run, oh, it was just so good. The battle mechanics were kind of weird with the speed versus power attacks, but I beat the game and honestly still couldn't really tell you the strategy besides just making sure you attacked multiple times before the opposing Pokemon could. But hey, it's a great game with areas that still looked rough. This game had some style, but it still feels like something that could be on the Wii. I think we had some updates to Pokemon doing cool animations and living in the real world, which is just amazing, but yeah, it's kind of rough looking. Then we get to probably the most polarizing of Pokemon games, Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. This game is so hard to talk about because it does so much right and so much of it is really fun, but it gets so much wrong at the same time. I think the gameplay is really fun. This is what Pokemon should be, exploring these fun, varied areas and finding Pokemon in their natural habitats. The problem is these areas and the game as a whole just looks awful. I mean, the game has glitches galore, you can't even go in most shops or buildings in the different towns, and I feel like that was something Pokemon has always done that was fun. Breaking and entering to find items is something we need back. Scarlet and Violet released a little over 2 years ago, and I feel like Game Freak or the Pokemon Company never really addressed the issues the game had. They released the DLC, which I never played, but since then it's been kind of radio silence on new games. We got a tease for a new Legends game with Zaza, and we've seen very little about it since it was announced. Okay, this is where we can talk about the future. It's clearly been a bumpy ride to get here, but with the Switch 2 on the horizon, there really isn't going to be any excuses for an underperforming Pokemon game from here on out. Many people say the Switch was too underpowered for any of the Pokemon games, and that just isn't true. Game Freak probably bit off more than they could chew when they were going from their low-poly 3DS games to full-fledged HD 3D worlds. So what will they do in the future? What would I like to see? They need to either spend some money we know that they have on bigger teams, or spend longer on making these games. It's most likely the latter. We really don't need a new game every couple of years like they've done in the past. I think we're all okay with them taking their time if it means a more polished and refined Pokemon experience. What should Game Freak do with their new games? They definitely need to keep experimenting. If Palworld taught us anything, it's that the monster catching genre can feel vastly different even if the core catching monster experience is close to the same. Maybe Pokemon can lean into more survival gameplay. Maybe an MMO where we have quests where we are progressing alongside each other and need more people for raids instead of just random raid boss spots in the latest few games. Who knows, this may be what they're building up to. Scarlet and Violet, as well as Legends Arceus, already started messing with the formula we were used to, and I think they should keep pushing the envelope. Keep trying new things and seeing what works. Ultimately, we just want to catch Pokemon and use them to fight each other. I also think they need to nail down a more distinct style. There have been so many comparisons of our current 3D Pokemon models to the old sprites, and it seriously feels like we're losing a lot of character here. I'm looking at you, Typhlosion, you used to be so cool. I have a suggestion. Maybe they can try this on Gen 5 remakes to test the waters, but I think it would be awesome to get an HD 2D version of the Pokemon games. This would really be a great throwback to the feeling the old games gave us, but add a ton of new flavor and still enable us to get cool animations for attacks. Look at Dragon Quest III, the HD 2D remake, which just came out, and you can already start seeing the Pokemon games start to work in this style. And I'm not a game designer, so I don't actually know, but I feel like this is something the developers would be more comfortable with, and maybe a bit more efficient since it's closer to the style they used to develop for. Who knows? The whole company could be different from 15 years ago, but hey, it's just a thought. If not HD 2D, then just something that looks better than what we have. Again, Legends Arceus is probably the closest thing to a style we have, but it feels like feudal Japan, and I'm not sure that would land with a region based on, say, Greece, for example. I want this to be a discussion, so if you have ideas for what Pokemon should do in the future, please let me know in the comments down below. This was a really fun topic to think about, and I'm excited to see what the Pokemon Company has to reveal for us on Pokemon Day in the coming weeks. Finally, I just want to thank you all so much for over 500 subscribers. At this point, I think it's been exactly a month since I've been uploading videos on YouTube, and I've just been having so much fun. Y'all have been so supportive, and the comments that I've been receiving have really been something special for me. It feels good to hear so many of you resonating with content that I've been putting a lot of time into making special, so thank you. I also read and respond to every single comment, so if you want to ask me a question or just comment about the video, I'll most likely respond. Check out my past videos on Switch 2 if that interests you, or my intro video to see what I'm all about. And as always,
thank you for all your support!